Can't put a price on it. Doesn't matter how much money they have. It's not enough.
Tonight, the Chilcotin keep up their fight to save their sacred sites in the fresh water. Fish Lake during the years-long battle by industry to get at the massive deposits of gold and copper.
It's going to continue to happen because there's more awareness of all the damage John A. Macdonald did.
Repeated political statements are being made at the statue of Canada's first Prime Minister.
You know, and I keep telling those kids, maybe one day you'll be right here.
And NHL hometown hockey in Cree coming to APTN this Sunday. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. The Chilcotin Nation is once again in court to try to stop a mining project that's in their territory. They say the Prosperity Mine threatens their way of life. APTN's Tina House has the story.
About 100 people gather on the steps of the courthouse in downtown Vancouver to show their support for the Chilcotin Nation and their fight to save Fish Lake.
What I call it is a genocide. You know, with our history, that's what happened. And today is no different. The genocide's still here.
It's a fight that has lasted 11 years to save Fish Lake, also known as Teston Binney. For the Chilcotin, it's a sacred place with ancient burial grounds and an abundance of fish. However, for Taseko Mines, it's sitting right on top of the 7th largest deposit of gold and copper in the world. But for Chief Jimmy Lalua, the land must remain untouched.
Can't put a price on our fish, and you can't put a price on our burial sites, our spiritual teachings. Can't put a price on it. Doesn't matter how much money they have. It's not enough.
In January of 2010, the BC government approved the project Taseko called the Prosperity Mine. The company initially wanted to turn Fish Lake into a tailings pond, but in July of 2010, a federal review panel found the project would have significant adverse environmental effects. In 2011, the project was renamed the New Prosperity Mine and didn't involve draining Fish Lake. 3 years later, in 2014, the Chilcotin Nation won a landmark land rights claim in the Supreme Court of Canada, which put the project on hold once again. But on former BC Liberal Premier Christy Clark's last day in office in July of 2017, she approved permits for the company to begin exploratory work in the area.
They're exploring. I don't think any drilling's going on, but they've been given their go-ahead on the 19th, but I'm pretty sure they're just opening roads and doing whatever else, but nothing too drastic yet.
Today, the Chilcotin are in court to file another injunction to stop the company. Dr. David Suzuki is here to offer his support.
It may seem like a remote battle going on somewhere else, but environmentalism teaches us that everything is connected. So what they're fighting in terms of their sacred land is a fight for us as well, because from those waters come many of the salmon that feed the whales here in the Salish Sea. You know, it's all interconnected.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Former Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould has submitted a letter to the Justice Committee offering copies of emails and text messages relating to the SNC-Lavalin scandal. Wilson-Raybould gave evidence last month saying she faced political pressure to get involved in a criminal case involving the engineering company based in Quebec, but she was only allowed to talk publicly about the time she was Attorney General. Everything after that is secret because of cabinet confidence. She says the new information that will be handed over will also cover that same period.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, but you don't get to move on to talk about other issues when you have a serious cloud of corruption hanging over you. Public service isn't transactional. It's not we announce a little program here and we get to help our buddies over here. That's not how it works, Mr. Speaker. And with respect to the Justice Committee, we know full well that a Liberal majority on that committee shut down the study. We know because the former Attorney General wrote the Justice Committee today and said she has more to say and hopes that the committee will accept her comments. She also said that those comments will be limited by the restrictions on the waiver that the Prime Minister issued. So will he lift the waiver, and will they create a forum for these former ministers to speak?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Committee members decided on parameters that they would be looking at, and that time dealt with a time that the former Attorney General was the Attorney General. When it comes to solicitor-client privilege, that is only pertinent to an Attorney General, Mr. Speaker. And now, all of a sudden, after the Justice Committee members set parameters, the Prime Minister lifted Cabinet confidence and lifted solicitor-client privilege for those parameters. The member is basically insinuating or implying that they should be working outside of those parameters. Have some regard and respect for this place, Mr. Speaker. I would encourage you to remind honourable members. Thank you.
The Liberal chair of the Commons Justice Committee, Anthony Housefather, says he received Wilson-Raybould's letter last night, and he welcomes any written submission she makes to complement her testimony. He says it's appropriate for Wilson-Raybould to submit more evidence, but that doesn't mean the committee needs to hold more meetings about her.
I don't think the fact that a witness wishes to submit a written submission to the committee means we have to necessarily hold more meetings about the subject. But I do think that it's perfectly logical and appropriate if Ms. Wilson-Raybould feels that she has more to say, that she was not able to say in her lengthy appearance before the committee, that she's able to provide that to the committee in writing so that the committee and Canadians can take cognizance of her additional information.
We're always wanting to hear what you think. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptnnews. Also, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest Indigenous news. On the eve of the International Day Against Racism, the John A. Macdonald Monument located in downtown Montreal has been vandalized. In the past 3 years, the monument has been vandalized with paint at least 6 times. But this time the action was claimed by #MacDonaldMustFall group in Montreal. They say it was undertaken in solidarity with global mobilizations against racism and fascism. The group accused Macdonald of white supremacy, contributing to the genocide of Indigenous peoples, the exclusion of people of Chinese origin, and responsibility for Louis Riel's execution.
They're going to come back like in a couple of weeks and do it again. It's going to continue to happen because there's more awareness of all the damage John A. Macdonald did to a lot of Canadians. So what is the point of having a statue of someone who's hurt so many? I know that sometimes they have special museums where they have people that did horrible things, and he could probably be in there.
Métis 60 Scoop survivors are being invited to engagement sessions taking place across the Métis homeland. They take place in Winnipeg this Saturday and Sunday, March 23rd and 24th. Métis and non-status Indians who are 60 Scoop survivors were left out of the settlement reached with Canada earlier this year. These gatherings are hosted by the Manitoba Métis Federation and the Métis National Council. It's a follow-up to the National Symposium on Métis 60 Scoop survivors that was held in Winnipeg last year. Manitoba Métis Federation President David Chartrand explains what to expect.
We'd be asking our people, like, what's the basis of what you would feel would help the healing, would help the change for the next generation.
And we'll have more for you on the Métis 60 Scoop survivors in the coming days. A new episode of AP10 Investigates debuts tonight right after the news. We'll speak with the reporter after the break. Here's a look at Saturday's weather forecast starting on the East Coast. A rain-snow mix and +3 for Halifax. Similar temperatures in Charlottetown. -7 in Nain. -1 for Happy Valley, Goose Bay. +3 for Montreal and Quebec City. Snow and 0 in Saguenay. +5 for Sarnia and Toronto. 7 above in Windsor. +8 under sunny skies in Thunder Bay. +5 for Timmins and Kapuskasing. -11 in Puckatawagan. -1 with snow for Norway House. +7 under sunny skies in Winnipeg and Brandon. 9 above in Dauphin. 17 above in Swift Current, plus 12 in Regina and Estevan. Minus 10 for Uranium City and Stony Rapids. Welcome back. For a quarter of a century, more than 100 people, Indigenous people, have learned the museum business. The National Museum of History has ran an internship program over that time. The hope is that the knowledge gained goes back home with the intern. APTN's Todd Lamoran met someone who wants to do just that.
Surrounded by the museum's Great Hall, Ariane Hai-Koyas rolls into work. Her cart contains examples of artifacts from the Northwest Coast. Being from Haida Gwaii, she's a bit of an expert.
What do you use that for? It's for
this? Yeah, this is the cedar bark, so it's for the basket weaving. So this is like after it's been pulled off the tree and processed.
Ariane is coming to the end of her 8-month internship.
It's a great experience and you learn a lot, and it's kind of, for me, like for coming from so far away, but coming to things that are from my own village or my own area and seeing that the mastery of it.
The Indigenous internship has been up and running since 1993. Gail Mullen is its current coordinator.
So they come here to acquire more experience, or there's a lot of people that already have an interest and they want to know if it's worth pursuing like studies over this.
Ariane knew about this opportunity a decade ago, but didn't pursue it then.
And I was shy, and I'm like, well, I'm not in university. I don't know if I could apply to something like that. And then I seen the application come around, and I didn't apply.
What she had was a lot of cultural knowledge. She'd been learning weaving techniques from her aunts since she was 14.
I can't learn weaving and all that at a university, but growing up with it, I was able to. So like the cultural background and everything made a difference in comparison to, say, educational. So.
Mullen dispels the notion a scholarly education is needed to apply.
It's not a requirement to have a diploma. We just ask for to have a high school diploma, and if you don't have any high school diploma, just have experience in the museum field or in cultural centers.
Ariane has researched a lot even about her own culture and about how different shaped baskets had different names in the Haida language.
And I didn't know about that until I came here and started that research project. So they would have baskets like the Kadi basket, which has a different technique, and it was made for harvesting seaweed. I thought that was just a basket.
She blames colonization for a lack of knowledge about her own culture, but she's determined to change that.
But at home, we may not have those types of baskets to use anymore. We might not, because it was all taken away, so it was sleeping. But now I can come home with more knowledge for our community.
To do what Ariane did this past year, the deadline to apply is April 14th. 3 or 4 interns will be picked. Todd Lamoran, APTN National News, Gatineau, Quebec.
A community has been working to save its language for the last 8 years. With less than 100 estimated speakers, they have no time to waste. Angel Moore brings us that story.
Interactive language classes are bringing a community together, but it's not enough. Fluent Maliseet speakers are declining. The exact number of speakers is not officially known, but Andrea Bear-Nicholas estimates it's under 60.
The damage is not finished because the residential schools are over. It's partly a result of residential schools still, because parents and others are not speaking their language to their children.
Bear-Nicholas says Indigenous language needs to have the same language rights as Francophones living outside of Quebec. She says Bill C-91 should include the right to have Indigenous immersion schools.
And if they're in their language, they're having to function in their language, not just learn how to sing "O Canada" or say "Our Father" in their language. They are actually learning to think and function in their language, and that's what's missing.
St. Mary's First Nation partnered with St. Thomas University to offer classes for adults. Some of the students plan on teaching Maliseet to children.
for the kids who don't go to on reserve schools, they kind of miss out on those things like I did growing up, going to public schools. I never had a native language class growing up.
Chief Alan Polchis Jr. says his community will continue to support language lessons. He says it is more than just speaking, it's identity that needs to be protected.
With the federal government, there's always a positive and a negative. The positive spin that, it's great for them, but on the negative, who really owns it at the end of the day? So that's something we need to be careful of.
Bear Nicholas says languages are being lost, and that's a form of assimilation.
Any community, any place where there are Indigenous people who do not have the right to schooling in their language, it's a violation of their rights under international laws. It's even been said to be a violation of the Genocide Convention.
She requested to appear before the committee reviewing Bill C-91 in Ottawa to speak about her concerns, but has not yet received a response. Angel Moore, APTN, National News, St. Mary's First Nation.
On this week's episode of APTN Investigates, Indigenous elders and trappers in Northern Ontario are worried about aerial spraying in the woods where they harvest food, fur, and medicine. APTN Investigates reporter Christopher Reed is here now to tell us about it. APTN Investigates reporter Christopher Reed is here to tell us about it. Christopher, what kind of aerial spraying goes on in the woods that these elders are concerned about?
Well, in the forestry business, it's become fairly commonplace to spray an area from the air with glyphosate herbicide after they've put in some new seedlings. They want the new seedlings to be able to grow and not have to compete with other plants. Glyphosate herbicide, of course, is commonly known by the trademark Roundup. In forestry, they use a version called Vision. You may recall in 2015, the World Health Organization determined that glyphosate herbicide, such as Roundup, is probably carcinogenic to humans. But on the flip side, basically almost every regulatory body in the world says glyphosate should be fine, should be totally safe for humans because it targets an enzyme in plants that humans don't have. These elders in Ontario, they're part of a group called the Traditional Ecological Knowledge, or TEC elders, and they're in the Robinson-Huron Treaty area. They say, and trappers are saying this too, that they're seeing declines in animal numbers, which they attribute to the glyphosate spraying.
And so what are the elders hoping to do about this?
Oh, they want to stop it. Sue Chibolo is a band counselor with Garden River First Nation. She also helps organize the TEC elders. She says the government is essentially playing ping pong with them. They go to the provincial government, and the provincial government says, well, it's actually Health Canada that says this stuff is safe, and then Health Canada comes back and says, well, it's actually the province that licenses glyphosate. So they're not getting anywhere, long story short. And they want it stopped because they see this chemical as a poison. They don't want it sprayed where they harvest food, fur, and medicine.
So as well as traveling to Sault Ste. Marie to interview the elders and trappers, you also made a trip to San Francisco. Why did you head there?
Well, San Francisco has become a hot spot for legal challenges against Monsanto, the company that makes glyphosate herbicide. Last year, a man named Lee Johnson convinced a jury in the San Francisco area that his non-Hodgkin lymphoma was caused by his exposure to Roundup. He was exposed to it as a school groundskeeper. The jury initially awarded him $289 million. The judge stepped in and said, we're going to reduce that to $78 million. He hasn't seen a penny of it yet because Monsanto is still appealing. But another trial that I saw the beginning of in February is underway. The jury has just announced this week that they feel the glyphosate exposure that Mr. Edwin Hardiman experienced over 3 decades was a substantial factor in causing his non-Hodgkin lymphoma. And now the jury is considering liability and damages. So the whole world is watching this trial, and there are more than 11,000 similar trials pending in the U.S. Will they have an effect on regulators around the world? Will the spraying of Canadian forests stop? We'll have to wait and see.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Not very long because that episode's coming up tonight. Christopher, appreciate you taking some time to speak with us about it.
Thank you.
Time for another quick break, and then we'll tee up this weekend's historic broadcast of an NHL game in Cree. Stick around. Here's the rest of Saturday's weather forecast, picking back up in northern Alberta. +4 with showers for Fort McMurray, sunny and 5 above in Peace River. 14 in Lethbridge, +13 for Medicine Hat. +12 with showers for Tofino and Vancouver, 15 above in Kamloops. +6 for Fort Nelson and Dease Lake, 7 above in Prince George. -3 for Old Crow, +9 in Whitehorse. 4 above with snow for Fort Liard and Trout Lake, -9 in Yellowknife. -18 for Sax Harbor, -4 for Fort McPherson, -24 in Whale Cove, 28 below with snow in Repulse Bay, -24 in Tallyoak, -28 in Resolute. Welcome back. What is thought to be the world's only albino penguin made its debut today at a zoo in Poland. The 3-year-old chick was born in December 2018. He needed special veterinary care so he could survive. Zoo staff keep the penguin isolated from the rest of the flock, fearing the other penguins will reject it because of its unusual appearance. It currently lives with its 2 parents and 2 other peaceful adult penguins. Well, history is being made Sunday evening. For the first time ever, APTN is broadcasting an NHL game entirely in Cree. APTN has teamed up with Rogers Sportsnet to broadcast the March 24th game between the Montreal Canadiens and the Carolina Hurricanes in Plains Cree. The game is part of Rogers' Hometown Hockey, which will be coming from Enoch Cree Nation near Edmonton Sunday. APTN has assembled a 4-member panel to deliver analysis and commentary in Cree. The panel includes Earl Wood, Jason Chamakis, and Clarence Iron. Former Montreal Canadian John Chabot rounds out the crew. Iron will be providing play-by-play coverage of the game.
I know someday somebody will be, a younger person will call play-by-play in Cree, but right now I'm opening doors for them, and I keep telling those kids, maybe one day you'll be right here, don't be scared, just keep going, and that's the only thing. People they get a little bit scared, as soon as they hear the word professional. You could be a professional, anything, nothing's impossible.
Apologies to John Chabot. Live coverage of that game between Montreal and Carolina will air on APTN on Sunday, March 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 4 p.m. Pacific, and it's an important game for the Canadians. Can't wait. It's going to be an exciting day. That's your APTN National News for this Friday. For the latest, visit our website, aptnnews.ca, and download the APTN News app. I'm Dennis Ward. APTN Investigates is next. Have a great night.